Welcome to the College Football Bros, the podcast ready for the best weekend yet. And now, here are your hosts, Michael, Ryan, and Trey Newman.
Welcome to the College Football Bros podcast. I am Michael Newman, and I'm joined by the brother who's been told he looks like Dexter.
Sure do. That's me, Ryan Newman.
And by the other brother who's been told he looks like Peyton Manning.
Yeah, that also is true. That's me, Trey Newman.
Not as much as Ryan looks like Dexter, though.
No, in fact, my forehead is kind of big. I'm coming out of the picture. I gotta adjust this.
If you're watching on YouTube, Trey's gonna adjust his screen. Okay.
Yeah. Who are you, Mike?
Who do I look like?
Yeah.
Oh,
Here we go.
Chris Pine. A little bit like a better looking Chris Pine, I've heard.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a lot to get to this episode, including our betting picks. So let's discuss a place where you can make those picks, mybookie.ag. We got a lot of listeners that ask us for those picks each week. Not sure why. We're just three idiots with a podcast, but just as important as the picks you choose are where you bet. So MyBookie has been great for the three of us. They've got free bets, odds boosts, huge cash prize contests all season long. They've got tons of props for the NFL and, of course, college football. I've made some Heisman bets, which have been fun to follow this year. Great customer service. So sign up in the next 6 days at MyBookie using the promo code CFBros to take advantage of a 100% deposit match, dollar for dollar, all the way up to $1,000. They've told us that in a week's time, that's going to go down to a 50% deposit match. So still good, but may as well sign up now if you're planning to. It gives you some free play money just to get a little head start on your winning season. So again, that's promo code CFBros, all caps, and go ahead and get in on UFC cards, presidential prop bets, all the major sports and more. Your winning season starts today only at MyBookie. All righty, let's get into college football, and we're going to give our week 9 takeaways. So each of us has 3 takeaways. Ryan, get us started.
Start off with my first one, just Clemson hanging on really close on that game. You might think watching, just seeing the score of that game, 34-28, Clemson won, but you might think, oh, Trevor Lawrence didn't play, so that's why the game was close. But that's not really what the case. I mean, DJ Ungululele, is that how I say it, Mike? I'm so bad with that.
Uyunglele.
I'm so bad with that. Sorry, DJ.
It's okay.
He was actually really good. He played very, very well. He was not the reason why this game was close. What allowed BC to stay close in this game was Clemson really not playing defense all that well in the first half. They gave up 3 drives of 74 yards or more that resulted in touchdowns for BC in the first half. So BC was sustaining some long drives against them early. They had a couple big plays, but still 3 long drives. And then, of course, the fumbles exchanged between Uyunglele and Etienne. Whose fault is that? It happened. But anyways, so That was obviously a return for TD. But Clemson woke up in the second half and dominated. But if I'm Clemson, I'm not really worried. I'm like, games like this happen. Lawrence wasn't playing, so maybe that did shake things up a little bit. Who knows? Even though it was really the defense's fault. But second half, that D was amazing. So maybe they're looking ahead to Notre Dame. Who knows? But I'm not over it.
And they had some players missing on defense too. So yeah, a little bit excusable.
All right,
Trey, what's your first takeaway?
You went with Clemson. I'll go with another top dog, Ohio State. They're really now, through 2 weeks, kind of in a league of their own in the Big Ten at this point. I know it's kind of stating the obvious, but Justin Fields is just incredible. There were multiple times throughout this Penn State game where the Nittany Lions would be an inch or a split second away from getting him, and he'd end up converting it for a positive play. It seemed like every time Penn State had a chance to get back in the game, Fields would convert a 3rd or 4th down. Like when you watch a game like this, you realize that if Ohio State just kind of had an average to above average quarterback, they'd still be really good, but they could have lost a game like this. But Fields is just such a difference maker. He is he's just his mastery is obviously one of the reasons they're very good. But you look going forward now at this point, the Buckeyes are going to be favored at least 2 touchdowns in every game, it appears, until the conference title. It's pretty
Yeah, they're way ahead. Penn State was the maybe the second best team, arguably the second best team, and they had them their shot.
Yeah,
we'll see about Wisconsin if they can how that works out, but
sure.
Okay, I'm gonna stick in the Big Ten and stick with a team that had a chance to maybe supplant Penn State as that number 2 team in the Big Ten, but they did not take advantage. Michigan. My takeaway is that their seemingly incredible Week 1 win at Minnesota was fool's gold, and we got a little bit of warning of that on Friday night because Minnesota's defense just apparently stinks. They lost to Maryland 45-44. They lost on a missed extra point in overtime, which is a rough way to lose, but Maryland's offense just torched them. Talia Tungavailoa. Now I'm messing up. Talia Tungavailoa. You'd think I would have this name down. He's
yeah.
I don't know if you guys know his older brother was a college football player as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Won his first NFL start.
He did.
No thanks to him.
So anyway, he had nearly 400 yards on 11.3 yards per attempt. Jake Funk was just dominating on the ground. He had 216 yards. So yeah, that was the warning sign that maybe Michigan's offense wasn't as good as we thought. And sure enough, the next day they lost as a 3-touchdown favorite against Michigan State. And after 8.5 yards per play against Minnesota, Michigan had a more pedestrian 5.3 against the Spartans. But honestly, just as concerning was the defense and the secondary. Rocky Lombardi hit on a ton of deep balls. Ricky White, the true freshman, had 196 yards receiving. He was making some great catches. So just a tough weekend for Harbaugh for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, that was weird. I did the Michigan last week on our takeaways, and I was like, hey, maybe they have something here. But then I did put a caveat, like, don't think Minnesota's D is that great. But
yeah. And we'll still see about the Michigan offense going forward. Like I said, 5.3 yards per play. That's not horrible against a good Michigan State defense. And I don't know. I mean, it's only 2 games, so we'll see going forward.
They're probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to my second one here. Texas and Oklahoma State. My takeaway is just I feel bad for Oklahoma State. That was a brutal loss for them. Of course, they lost 41-34 in overtime, but they were the better team in this game. They outgained Texas by nearly 250 yards. Texas really couldn't do much at all offensively, but the Cowboys gifted the Longhorns 5 turnovers. 4 of them were fumbles. So it was a -5 in the turnover margin. Just brutal.
And they roughed the punter one time. That's pretty much a turnover.
Yeah,
exactly. And all those mistakes, it just goes to show you, like, Oklahoma State is definitely better. They had those huge mistakes, but it still went to overtime. Texas still barely won and was barely.
Texas had a kick return touchdown. Like, just
it was a fluke.
Yeah. They're very lucky to be in that game.
Yeah, exactly. They shouldn't have won. Oklahoma State sucks because they were looking legit. They still are. I mean, they can easily go win the Big 12 still, but playoff chances took a major hit there for them. So it's too bad. I wish they, just for Oklahoma State's sake, like, seems like the stars have kind of aligned where they actually have a legit defense, and to lose like that.
And Spencer Sanders, like, he played really, really well.
Yeah, he did.
But then he had a couple you're like, oh, you should take him back. But I saw Bill Connolly tweeted that Texas had a 3% post-game win expectancy, which was his lowest of the season so far, based on the stats afterwards.
Close to Penn State, right? That Penn State-Indiana game?
Yeah, that was,
depending on the metric you looked at.
Wow. But Oklahoma State seemed more.
And that Bill Connolly, like, it's not surprising at all. We all watched the game closely, and it felt that way.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep. I'm going to go to the SEC. LSU, maybe I'm underselling this. They're in big trouble this year. Auburn just punked them. Well,
I would say so.
Yeah,
I mean,
2-3 got Alabama left, and
I think people were still holding out kind of hope with the name, but Auburn just punked them. They won 48-11. It was 48-3 before Auburn kind of called off the dogs in the fourth quarter. Bo Nix had one of his best games of his career, really, and Auburn's offense that had been kind of weak through, weaker than expected this year. They put up 500 yards of offense on the defense. So they're sitting at 2-3. Bo Pelini's defense is now ranked. His defense is ranked 70th in SP+. And listen to the offenses they still have to play. Alabama, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Florida. So that's murderer's row. And so they're going to need Miles Brennan to get healthy so that they can try and at least maybe outscore some of these teams. But otherwise, it's yikes.
Okay. My next takeaway, Bronco Mendenhall made the gutsiest call of the weekend. So Virginia at one point was up 41-20 against North Carolina. But of course, in the fourth quarter, they always seem to come back. Sam Howell and De'Ami Brown led a great comeback. So they cut it to 3. So Virginia's up 3 with the ball, 4th down at their own 43-yard line with 2 minutes left. And so you figure you just punt it away and, hope to stop them. But they ran a fake punt. They snapped it to Keaton Thompson. He ran to the right. It was totally covered over there. So he changed course, went left, got the first down. So that was it. They could just kneel it out then. So that was very gutsy because if you don't get it, North Carolina is already almost in field goal range. But, I'm not sure I guess if you have a fake punt you feel really good about, then I think it is a good calculated decision because you can just, like you say, you get 2 chances to win the game kind of because you can end it right there. Like you literally win if you get that first down, or even if you don't get it, you hope to,
well, and that's one of those, and that's one of those times where the North Carolina is not expecting a fake punt at all. Like there's some situations in a game where you see teams run a fake punt and you're like, that just wasn't going to work because they were in safe mode. But Carolina no one was expecting that.
No, although they covered it well. Like it looked like they had it, but Keaton Thompson made a great play.
Yeah, that's a disappointing one for UNC right there. They've had a couple very disappointing losses early in the year. So, all right, moving on to my last one here. I'm gonna say going over like Cincinnati and BYU. It's two. Indiana or BYU is a independent, but non-Power 5 teams here. They both just look, very, very, very good. I guess kind of what I'm wondering is like, what happens if they both go undefeated? BYU's only got 3 games left. Biggest one coming up this week when they go to Boise. And then they do have the Aztecs at the end, which, Aztecs are pretty good too. But then you got Cincinnati, who's demolishing teams, like teams that they're supposed to be neck and neck with in the conference, like SMU and Memphis. Like they were supposed to be contenders neck and neck. Cincy's just taking it to another level. So, if they both win out, they both are going to make a New Year's 6. If they both win out, like I wouldn't think that'd be shocking if one of them missed out on that. But, each week, so Oklahoma State just lost, right? It's like each week that somebody else loses and they dominate more and more. It's like, okay, maybe they have a, since it, I guess Cincy would have the edge, but over BYU.
Oh, yeah.
I got to think, because Cincinnati's the BYU schedule. I know now Boise and, maybe hopefully SDSU is good, but their schedule, unfortunately, it's just been garbage so far. Yeah.
Through no fault of their own. It was supposed to be really good.
No. Yeah, it's not their fault. It sucks, but Cincy has a, with all those AAC foes, a reasonable schedule, and they got to play more games, right? So
if they were just scooting by, maybe, and BYU was dominating, but Cincy's dominating too, is the thing. So
yeah, they've turned it up a notch, like you said. The offense the last 2 weeks has gone to another level.
Blowing out Memphis and SMU, they separated. They got UCF left. At
UCF. They're not that. That's the thing is we're all talking about Cincinnati. They're still, I would put it well under 50% that they will win out. Like they even just at UCF right now, Cincy might be a slight favorite, but if they are, it wouldn't be by much.
Yeah, and then they have to play the conference title game as well. So
they've got still a tough road.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to my last takeaway is Louisville. They're one of the biggest disappointments this year. They lost at home to Virginia Tech this weekend, and that's not a terrible loss, but they're now 2-5, only 1-5 in the ACC at this point. And all of us on here and a lot of people throughout the country were fairly bullish on Scott Satterfield's squad. But we knew their defense was going to be a liability, but I don't think we quite envisioned it would be maybe this poor. They have some winnable games remaining, but even if they won out, which I think they're an underdog this weekend, but even if they won out, they'd only finish 500 in the conference. So pretty underwhelming ACC or Louisville run this year.
They're already guaranteed to go under their win total. Their win total was 7.
Not great. Well, a team that does have a pretty good chance of winning out, I think, is Oklahoma. So they just murdered Texas Tech this past
that's
weekend.
brutal.
Yeah, they did. Got a couple guys back from suspension. Ronnie Perkins on defense, the key player there. Ramondre Stevenson at running back had a good game. And here's the remaining schedule. So you got Kansas, and then Oklahoma State at home. Obviously, that's the toughest one, but it's at home. At West Virginia and Baylor. There's a reasonable chance. I mean, they could go 4-0 there. So
Oklahoma State is the, toughie. The others feel pretty good about them winning.
At home to Baylor and at home to Kansas, I would be shocked. At West Virginia, you never know.
Yeah, West Virginia is possible. Yeah.
But anyway.
Then they're right there on the Big 12 title, probably, if they win out, right?
Yeah, because Oklahoma State has lost. I don't know if they control their destiny. I guess they
Iowa State, K-State still have one loss.
Iowa State, K-State. But if OU wins out, I would think it's very, very likely OU's in the Big 12 championship.
As soon as you count them out, they're right back there.
Boomer.
Yep. All right. Well.
Okay.
Boomer.
Blank stares there. Okay.
I got
it. Anything else? Anything else from the weekend? I did want to bring up Rutgers almost having the most miraculous cover in the history of college football. They ran a play. If you haven't seen it yet, you've got to Google it. They ran a play where they were doing tons of laterals. It got insane. And somehow they scored a touchdown to cover, but they called it back. They said there was an illegal forward pass, which I guess I watched the replay and I saw the one that they must have called. It was close. I was watching it on YouTube. So I wasn't able to scrub slowly to see it clearly, but it was close.
It's too bad.
Okay. Let's get to our segment. So we went to Instagram and requested some questions from the listeners. So thanks to everyone who asked us questions. We're getting to 3 of our favorites for this episode, but we're also going to have an entire Q&A episode in the next week on Patreon. So if you want to support us there for $5 a month, you'll get another episode in the coming week, and along with 10 plus episodes that we've recorded in our backlog. So would really appreciate your support there. But first question here comes from Carter Glenn Pilster. He says, just a down year for LSU due to inexperience, or will they be bad for a couple years?
Well, I mean, I kind of voiced my opinion a little earlier, at least on this year's LSU team. A lot of it, of course, is inexperience. I'm not chalking this up to this is what their future is going to look like. They're recruiting insanely well, but I would be a little concerned because Ed O was going into, what was it, last year, he wasn't on the safest seats, and obviously he had that incredible run. But the further you get away from that with the, losing guys like Joe Brady, obviously like Joe Burrow, if Pelini can't form a defense. Yeah. So there was a lot of losses, not just from the player side, which obviously that was a huge part, but now I guess what I'm trying to say is that he is going to have to prove himself as the coach at O, not just the recruiter, because he's going to have to develop some of this talent if they want to get back into the SEC race.
I don't think they're in trouble, long term here. I think this is just due to inexperience, due to a ton of guys being gone. They had best team of all time for their team, LSU, and they lost just every single person. It's a brand new team this year, inexperience everywhere, young players, some injuries at the beginning of the year. So they've been dealt a bad hand in that regard. I mean, you can forgive it just because of the amazing year last year, but it's all about talent. That's what college football is about. It's about talent. They have it. They're going to still have it. This just needs a little more seasoning. 2019, 2020, both of those recruiting classes, top 5. 2021 is currently 4th. 2022, the following year, they're actually number 1 already. They're going to be fine. They're going to get back to top 15 type team. They'll go win at least 8+ games each year normally. So they'll be very, very good. And they're not going to ever go 15-0 and be that good. I mean, they're not going to dominate like they did
it's
last
unlikely,
year.
Yeah.
They're going to be in contention for the West and normal years. So I'm not worried about this year. We knew that. I mean, most of us, people that anticipated. We maybe didn't anticipate really this quite bad, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, what they do have going for them too, also next year, is that the non-conference is a total joke. They've got at UCLA, McNeese State, Central Michigan, and ULM. So the win total next year will get a nice boost from that non-conference.
Probably the best team in that group.
What's that?
Central Michigan's probably the best team of that group.
Well, I don't know about that.
Central's got a promising future. They should be pretty good this year and next year too.
Yeah. But anyway, but the thing is, like, what are they going to go 4-6? You know, maybe at best this year. Could
probably at best, yeah.
So, and they're 42nd SP Plus right now. There's only so much of a jump that you expect any team to make in 1 year. So next year, it's possible, but it's hard to envision them being, you know, a legit top 10 team. That would be, I think, a very impressive job by Coach O if he can do that. But so let's say next year they lose 3+ games. Then suddenly you're 5 years, you know, full seasons into Coach O's tenure, and you're looking back, and 4 of those 5 years have been 3+ losses. Now, it's understandable. It's the SEC West, and you want the 1 year that wasn't, you went 15-0. So obviously it's still a great tenure so far, but what's the fan base gonna think heading into that 6th year? I know I'm really looking ahead, but it's just something to look ahead to, because I think we might get to that point.
Yeah, it's kind of like the people bring up Gene Chizik. You know, he had that one Cam Newton year, and then but everything else was kind of average. But I mean, like Ryan said, their talent's going to be so good to where it's like at worst they would have those 3 losses, but that's not what LSU wants. They're going to want 2 at most and a chance for the conference championship. So
right. So okay, I think we presented both sides well there. Let's get to the next question, Ryan.
Yeah, next question. All right, from Hunter JC42. He asks, of the current top 10, who among them have the best and worst chance of making it to the college football playoff?
Okay, so let's go through this together. So let's start with the best chance.
Ohio State.
You say Ohio State, Ryan?
I say Bama.
I say Bama as well. So you lose, Trey. No, the reason is they have a favorable remaining schedule. I think maybe only 4 games left. And I also think, is it more than that?
No. I'm waiting to hear your guys'.
Oh, you're waiting to hear my case. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think they almost assuredly, not 100%, but very close, have a loss to burn, because if they lose one of these regular season games and then win in the conference title against Georgia, they're 100% in. And if they go undefeated in the regular season and say lose close to Georgia or Florida in the SEC title, I still think there's a really good chance they're in. So
okay, that's fair. I was kind of more looking at the terms of like unbeaten.
But anyway,
no, I agree.
Okay. So you what about for Ohio State? Why'd you go with them?
Well, the reason I kind of flinched on Bama, because I didn't consider the loss factor, but I was thinking, okay, well, they still have to play Auburn, who I know it's not the same Auburn, and then Florida or Georgia. But all right, Ohio State, I kind of laid it out earlier. They're going to be a double-digit favorite in the rest of the regular season. Really, arguably, their toughest game it's either Indiana or Michigan, and you know, stranger things have happened. But then on the West, for them to play in the Big Ten championship, maybe Wisconsin. We don't know how their COVID thing's going to shake out. If it's not Wisconsin, then the West winner is going to be kind of a joke. So, but you're right. The Ohio State doesn't have as much leeway in terms of a loss with a shorter season.
They probably have a greater chance of going undefeated than Bama.
That's what Yeah. That's the way I was looking at it. But you're right.
Question.
You're right.
But Ohio State too, probably there's a good chance they have a loss to burn if it comes in the regular season. Who knows? But if they lose one game in the regular season and then win the Big Ten title, I think there's very high chance they're in.
Yeah.
So it's close between those two.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, worst chance. I think this is even harder. This to me was between A&M and BYU. Did either of you guys have another team in there, or?
I put BYU.
By the way, I should list off the top 10 for the listeners. So
go ahead.
Here's the top 10 teams: Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Cincinnati, Texas A&M, Florida, BYU, and Wisconsin. Okay, so go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm saying Bama. I put Cincy and Bama as the worst.
You mean BYU?
Oh, what did I say?
Cincy and Bama.
Yeah, Bama's got no chance. Cincy and BYU as the worst. It's just. How can you put them above teams that have a realistic shot above them? Like Florida, only one loss. A&M, only one loss. Wisconsin, still undefeated. And, you know, if they managed to play enough games and went out there, no doubt, in Georgia. So I just don't think BYU they need so much chaos in front of them for them to make it, like a ton.
Yeah. So I think, well, if you had it down to Cincy and BYU, Ryan, then I would just go with BYU because
100%.
No,
yeah,
that's what
BYU,
I mean. I say BYU, but I'm just saying
BYU,
those were my last two of the
Right.
top 10.
Okay.
But
What about you, Trey?
Well, I was between, like you, Michael, BYU and A&M, and I think, and if you're probably going to mention the point that A&M, they need Bama to lose twice, right? So
Well,
in order to,
I mean, or some sort of chaos. They could go 9-1 and just be 9-1 and still make it, even if they don't make the conference title.
that's fair.
They would need some help for sure.
That's fair. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
Bama's not even
my
playing.
answer for sure is BYU. But A&M it's an uphill climb, and they can't afford any blemishes, and maybe get a little luck. But Michael, do you have anything else to add to A&M?
I guess I'll ultimately, since you guys both think BYU, that kind of sways me. I was kind of 50-50 between A&M and BYU. I'll say BYU because, yeah, they just need, I mean, they need a ton more help than A&M. That's for sure, to get in there. But they're also way more likely to win out than A&M. So I'm kind of having trouble balancing those.
True, it's kind of
A&M still has work left to do. But
yeah, but they have all the teams in front of them have to lose for them to jump up in it.
And the teams behind them, BYU.
Yeah,
true.
BYU's
Good point.
they're almost impossible, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unless they schedule somebody else somehow, or
Yeah,
I don't know.
Don't count on a Big Ten team.
No.
All right.
All
Let's,
right. Next question.
Trey's up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. From the Digital Drifter, do you think the CFP committee will value total games played versus record? So, an example, a 5-0 Wisconsin versus a 6-1 USC.
I don't think amount of games is going to be a huge factor. It's just they can't hold it against teams for not being able to play. And then I feel like the committee's always, in the years that we've had the committee, I've always felt like they've done a pretty good job of just picking the best team, regardless of any external factors. Could be losses, could be weird situations. Like they always, sometimes this who they play, who they lose to, like they just do a good job of assessing, I think, who's the best team. And if 5-0 Wisconsin to them is looking like the best team, I think they'll pick them. But I don't think they're going to weigh total games versus record, So in that scenario, 5-0 Wisconsin, I don't even know if the Big Ten will change it, but I thought they had to play like 6 games to make the Big Ten title game, but then maybe they'd adjust. But
yeah, who knows what could happen.
But to answer the question, it's just, I don't think they're going to really go either way on that.
I think I kind of generally agree with you. I think it's a factor. I just don't think it's a huge factor. Like, so I'll say this, in a vacuum, I would definitely rather be 5-0 than 6-1. I don't think playing 2 extra games is worth adding a loss to your resume.
Right. Yeah, maybe if you're at 11-1.
I was going to say, yeah, if you're 10-1 versus 5-0, then I'd probably rather be 10-1. I think that is
absolutely.
Yeah, that volume of games is going to be, 10-1 record is generally more impressive than going 5-0. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Fair.
I totally agree with what you have to say.
Okay, but let me give you guys a really tough scenario here. So let's say, who knows how it happens, but let's say Ohio State only plays 5 games and they're a dominant 5-0. They look as great as they've looked, these first 2 games, and they're up against, for that 4th spot, a 10-1 Oklahoma State team. Who does the committee choose? And Oklahoma State, wins close, or they win like they've been winning.
Ohio State.
You think they go Ohio State? What do you think, Trey?
I think Ohio State only, and whether it's fair or unfair, because one of the things that the committee tends to probably evaluate is metrics. And Ohio State, no matter what their record is, no matter how many few games they play, they're going to be one of the top 2-3 teams.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's a tough call, though.
It's very tough. That's why I asked you guys, because I don't know who they would choose. That is so tough. But
because at some point you do have to consider, though, like 11 games. I mean, yeah, it's unlucky that Ohio State only got to play 5, but that was the resume they were dealt. Like, yeah, I mean, it's a weird year.
If you're saying like, somebody like let's just say like Purdue or something. Like we're talking another Big Ten team that could go undefeated in a short amount of games, but it's Purdue, no chance. I don't think.
Right.
I think they would take. But if it's Ohio State, they're taking Ohio State.
I mean, ultimately, they could very well fall back on that. You know, they've got all those metrics and all those, you know, strength of schedule and all those things, but it says best team. It says they're choosing the best team. If that's really what they want to be doing,
Ohio State is one of the 4 best teams. We could already pretty much say that.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean,
it's weird though, because if
we
you
won't see. I don't think we will.
If you did one of those like blind resumes and they said their only win was at Penn State, which isn't, it's obviously not that's a good win, but if that's all that they had, like Oklahoma State would have beaten Oklahoma,
right,
and the Big 12 championship. So that, I guess, now the more I think about it, it's hard.
I know it's tough. I don't know what they would do. I don't know,
because I agree. I would say Ohio State's clearly better than Oklahoma State. Yeah, no, Ohio State is clearly better than Oklahoma State, but when you look at it over the whole scope, that's where the scenario gets.
That's why I think it's different if you're talking about a Purdue or a Wisconsin rather than Ohio State.
Very true. Yep. All right. That was a fun hypo. Let's get into our Week 10 picks, and we're going to start with MACtion. We have Wednesday night. All 12 teams in the MAC are playing. What is your best bet on Wednesday night?
So I'm going to lay a bunch of points on Toledo to beat Bowling Green. I liked them a little more when it was 19 yesterday, but I think it's up to 22 right now. This is more just a play though against Bowling Green, because I think they could be one of the worst teams in college football. They lost a couple quarterbacks. They were already a terrible offense last year. They only averaged 16 points a game. The defense isn't supposed to show anything. Scott Loeffler is heading into year 2, just not seeing much hope. Toledo, also, they should have one of the better offenses in the MAC. 8 starters returning, Eli Peters at quarterback, 4 starters on the offensive line. I think they're just going to obliterate Bowling Green here.
Very well could happen, yep. All right, I'm going to take Northern Illinois, the Huskies. They're getting 10.5 at home against Buffalo. I think NIU kind of has a bounce back year this year. Last year was kind of a weird year, it seemed like, for them. A big key for them would be Ross Bowers. If he can stay healthy, then he should be a pretty solid player. He's obviously a Cal transfer. The offense should improve a ton. They got 8 starters back. Defense returns the entire front 7, essentially. They do lose everybody in the secondary, but again, I've mentioned this before, I'd rather lose my secondary than my front 7. And I feel like Buffalo's
there's more guys in the front 7, so I guess
fair enough, Mike.
I know Bill Connolly though, with his projections, losing guys in the secondary, at least predictively in SP Plus, is more of a negative to a defense than losing players either in the D line or linebacking core, which is interesting. But yeah, when you combine the front 7, then I'll go with
which is what I did. But
yeah.
All right. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. All right, but I'm sure he's right. I can argue with him. He did a lot of data. All right.
But Ryan, you're going up against Lance Leopold, Jarrett Patterson, Kevin Marks. They got good running backs.
I think they're getting a little too hyped. Maybe, I mean, not like they're getting a ton of hype, but like they were good last year because of that offensive line. Their line was really, really good. They were the best rushing team in the conference, but they lose 3 really good offensive linemen. So they were the number 1 rushing team, and they were the number 1 rushing defense. Then they lose 2 quality D tackles. So I just don't think they're going to be able to dominate the trenches as much. Northern Illinois, I think, will make it interesting. I still think Buffalo's going to be good, but I just think this game will be close.
Okay. I picked a different game. I'm going to go with Ohio. They're pick'em right now at Central Michigan. I just like the consistency of Ohio under Frank Solich. Basically, the entire team is back except Nathan Rourke, who you could kind of argue was the entire team. He's great, but his little brother could get the start at quarterback. He's a redshirt freshman, which is interesting. Or from UNLV, Armani Rogers. And on the other side, the expected quarterback for Central Michigan, David Morris, suspended for the beginning of the season. They also lost, crucially, their 2 starting corners, one of them to transfer, another got kicked off the team. So I think that could make things a little bit easier for breaking in a first-year quarterback for Central Michigan or for Ohio. All right.
One other MAC point I did want to bring up. Kent State. I like Dustin Crum. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks. Sean Lewis, the head coach, is doing a great job. They're kind of ahead of schedule there.
Yeah.
Dustin Crum almost made our top 15 quarterbacks nationally.
That's
in the
right.
offseason.
I forgot about that.
He had an amazing season last year. All right, now over to the Pac-12, which of course I don't think we've even mentioned on this episode yet, is getting its start this week. We just did our Pac-12 season preview episode, so check that out in your podcast app or here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Which Pac-12 underdog do you like the most this weekend?
Hold your horses here, Mike. You missed a game.
We can flip it. We can flip it.
Oh, we'll flip it. Should we flip it?
Let's flip it.
All right, let's flip it. We'll do it live. All right. Arizona State at USC. Thank you for that, Ryan, though.
Yeah.
Arizona State's plus 11. Stanford is plus 10.5 at Oregon. And Arizona is plus 14 at Utah. I'll go first here. I'm going to take Arizona State at USC. 11 is just a lot of points. And even though I'm relatively low on Arizona State this year compared to most people, they still have Jaden Daniels. They still have, Frank Darby, who's a great receiver. I think that connection could be a threat for sure to a USC defense. They likely have a solid defense themselves. So as a USC fan, let's just say I'll be happy with any size win. A 10-point win, I'll take it right now.
Yeah. I'm 100% in agreement with you, Mike. The other thing is this game's at 9 a.m. local time, kind of weird, never been done before. Who knows what's going to happen? And that we know that ASU is supposed to have a decent defense, and USC's kind of Achilles heel last year was keeping Keaton Slovis upright. So if they can generate a little pressure and get pressure on him, and then also Todd Orlando's defense for USC could be still adjusting to a new system. But I'm like you, though. I'm not expecting a ton from ASU this year, but they could. It wouldn't shock me if they gave them a scare.
Okay. I'm going to go a different game here. I'm going to take Arizona. They're the 14-point underdog at Utah. I like Arizona's offense. I just think they're going to be able to put up some points against a defense that is breaking in like 9 new starters. So I don't think Arizona's defense is all that good. They're actually pretty horrible, and they're going to be very bad. But again, Utah, little uncertain of who's going to be the quarterback, whoever it is. I don't think they're going to be nearly as dependable as Tyler Huntley was, and they don't have Zach Moss. They're not going to be able to move the ball as consistently, nowhere near. So I think Arizona with that offense, they're going to be able to keep this one interesting. I think so. I'll take the Wildcats there.
I like that. We didn't mention it in the Pac-12 preview, but Utah this year could almost be like a mini version of LSU in the sense that they just lost so much. I mean, not as much as LSU, but so much from that team that maybe
multi-year starters. It wasn't just like a 1-year wonder. It was like, guys that have been around for 3 years.
Yeah. Like I know the culture is really great there with Whittingham, and he's been recruiting well. So maybe they'll still be good, but there's the chance that the bottom falls out.
Yeah, they'll regress, but they'll come back, and they always do that. They always seems like they have a really good year, come back a little bit, then peak up, and boom.
I thought it was interesting that Oregon line though, because Oregon is less of a favorite against Stanford at home than USC is against ASU.
Yeah,
I agree.
That was a little telling.
Yeah. I mean, is the market saying that?
I think the Stanford name somehow still carries a little bit of weight. I mean, I think they'll improve a little bit from last year, but Stanford gets some respect.
Yeah, I think
they got a lot of talent. They had a lot of injuries, so we'll see if they're how good they are. But okay, let's go backwards in time to Friday because we've got a huge game.
Yeah,
BYU is a 3-point favorite at Boise State. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, this is exciting. I'm glad both this game was able to be scheduled, of course. We're all glad that this game is going to be able to be played. Boise, they look solid the last couple weeks. They beat Air Force last week and then whooped up on Utah State the week before. But the question for them is coming into this game is, it may not matter, but who the quarterback's going to be. Jack Sears played last week at Air Force, filling in for Hank Bachmeier, and Sears was awesome last week. He was about as good as you can be. So whoever plays, they'll be good. So it seems like BYU will have to kind of be ready for both quarterbacks. They don't really know. Overall in the game, though, I'm going to take BYU. Boise last week, they were actually outgained by Air Force. So, they actually had a kick return TD also. So it just made that game, it was 49-30, but it really was even closer than that, than the score indicated. And I just think Boise, they're a little young on both lines. So I think BYU, their experience and their age, I think that'll give them some edge there. So I think they'll cover the 3 points.
Yeah, that's definitely a risk is line play. I'm going to go with Boise to, I think it'll be a close game, so I'm going to take 3 points, but that is the risk because BYU's line play has been very good this year, especially that offensive line, and Boise State hasn't been tested like that yet. So we will see. And you're right, they lost a lot of starters on both fronts. But just for me, I guess it's because BYU's schedule has been so poor. The one time they haven't played anybody that's currently in the top 50 in SP plus, and their toughest game was probably at Houston. And going into the fourth quarter, they were actually trailing that game. They did, kind of explode in that fourth quarter. But I think a good team like Boise can hang with BYU.
Yeah. The other, to add on to that, the best defense that they played statistically is Western Kentucky. So this is going to be their toughest challenge so far. I'm also taking Boise, but another risk that you have to factor in is Boise also lost Dimitri Washington. He's a stud on their defense. He left the last game with injury. I don't know if he's out for the year or not, or if he's out just for this game or not even. Maybe he'll be back. So obviously, Ryan, you touched on whether it's the quarterbacks or their lines, but I'm still going to take 3 points at home.
And by the way, I think it's just so obvious that we didn't bring it up, but Zach Wilson for BYU, not a bad quarterback.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, he's pretty incredible.
He's legit Heisman candidate, and he's got a great receiving core. Gunnar Romney, Dax Milne having huge years. So yeah, that's why they're a deserving. They're going to be able to move it.
But I'm so glad this is on Friday night. Like, I'm looking so forward to this game.
It's going to be a great week.
It is. Oh, this is a great weekend. So, okay, Michigan -3 at Indiana. We'll work our way up to the top games. But Trey,
whoa, Michael, you skipped.
Did I skip something else? Are you kidding?
No,
me?
I'm just kidding. No.
Oh,
wow. Well, of course, we all know the Wolverines need to bounce back, or they're going to be hearing a lot of rumors the rest of the year if they don't. They can't afford a 1-2 start while being favored in all 3 of the games. We touched on the offense earlier. It's not fully polished with Gaddis. They weren't able to bust those big runs like they were against Minnesota, and Milton threw it 51 times. And Harbaugh and Gaddis know that that's not a good recipe, and they're not going to win a ton of games if they need to have him huck it that much. The Hoosiers defense, it's not quite as good as Sparty, but it's still a formidable unit. Compound that with an offense on paper that is pretty good with Michael Penix and Whop Fillier. I think the Hoosiers can hang, and I'll take them as a dog at home here.
All right, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to take Michigan. I think they can get a little bit of a improvement off of last week. Last week, rivalry game. Sparty's got a solid D, some talent. I think they can kind of wash that out and maybe get a little happy medium between the Minnesota game and Michigan State. Whereas Indiana, I just don't trust them. I don't trust Penix really. I know he had a decent game obviously last week, and then Penn State he just wasn't very good. I think Michigan does have a good defense. I know they kind of had some leaky play against Michigan State, but they're still a good unit. I think they'll get better. So I think I'll take the talent. I'll take the Joe Milton. I'll take Michigan to kind of bounce back on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. I'm gonna, I guess, sell high on Indiana and maybe buy low on Michigan. I thought Indiana, that Penn State win, we talked about it. They got, outperformed significantly, at least by the predictive stats. They won the turnover battle last week 3-0 against Rutgers, and still, struggled to cover. No, didn't quite blow them out. So yeah, I'll just bet on Michigan to bounce back against what I think is not, you mentioned, Trey, not quite as good a defense as Michigan State. Florida plays Georgia in Jacksonville, and Georgia's favored 3.5. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, definitely a contrast in styles here. Florida and their high-powered offense, but going up against Georgia and their really good D. In this day and age of college football, I'm going to lean with the better offensive team. Georgia really struggled last week against Kentucky. I mean, they only put up 14 points. That's, and Kentucky's defense is solid, but they've had some gashing games where they didn't look so very good this year. So most Ole Miss, anybody, but So that Georgia offense really worries me. I don't know if they're just going to be able to blow out, and they don't necessarily need to blow out, but I don't know if they can really extend much of a lead here. Stetson Bennett, it seems his kind of boost that he had at the beginning of the year is kind of wearing off. He's kind of showing that he's the reason why he was about third string when the season started. So I'm not confident in them being able to put up a ton of points on Florida, really on anybody. So I think it's going to be a super close game, low scoring-ish type of game, but I got to take the 3.5 points with Florida. It's just kind of when I look at the two quarterbacks, you got Kyle Trask who's playing great, and you got Stetson Bennett. That's hard to give points in that when you consider the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I hear you. I think this will be a close game as well. I think Florida's defense, if they want to win this game, they got to hope that Missouri performance last weekend was telling, that they're improving, and it wasn't just because they were playing Missouri. Because even with some players missing last weekend with COVID, they had, I think, 15 guys out overall. Still played really well. They got Kyrie Campbell back on the defensive line. He'd been out all year. I think that's huge. Hopefully they'll be getting some of those players back from quarantine. That would just help for depth in this game. And but they will be without a starter on the D line, Zachary Carter, for the first half, because of course that brawl. We haven't brought up the brawl, have we yet?
Yeah. Well,
in last week's game. Yeah,
not
Dan
a great
Mullen,
moment.
Got a little crazy there, going after.
Mr. Mullen lost his attitude there for a second.
He got heated. Yeah,
he did.
Wow,
for sure. But anyway, I think the losses on Georgia's defense are even bigger here, because you need all hands on deck, even with that great Georgia defense, to slow down Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, just amazing Florida offense. So Georgia's star nose tackle, Jordan Davis, is out. Another D lineman, Julian Rochester, out. Their starting safety, Richard LeCount, had a scary motorcycle accident this past weekend. He'll be out, but thankfully seems like he's going to make a full recovery. Their other starting safety, Lewis Seen, is dealing with an ankle sprain. So there's just enough issues on that Georgia defense that I think Florida can have some success. So that's why, I don't know if they'll win, but I'll take 3.5.
Yep. Clean sweep. I'm taking the Gators as well. Just totally not a believer.
Waiting on that.
What did I say?
I think we're having a delay or something. Because there was like 5 seconds before you responded, but I'll fix that in post.
Oh, wow.
Don't worry.
Got it. I'm going to take the Gators as well, though. Like I said, I just cannot stand. You guys threw me off. That the Georgia offense. Like, where's JT Daniels? Did his leg fall off? Like, he can't.
he must still be hurt. Yeah. I guess. I don't know.
It's
so
a good question. Bizarre. But I just think it's going to hold them back, and they could beat Florida, but in the long run, I think it's just going to hold them back. And because we know the Gators can be a little vulnerable on defense, Michael, but you touched on how well they played, but I don't think they can be. The Georgia can expose them enough. So I think this is the year the Gators end that Georgia streak. I'm going to make Florida my lock.
Ooh, I like it.
I do too. Okay, next game. Another huge game. Yeah. Clemson -5.5 at Notre Dame. And I'm going to take Clemson here. I know they're dealing with several key pieces, being out themselves. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, of course, still out with COVID. But Uiagalelei played great last weekend. And on defense, there's no James Skalski at linebacker, maybe no Tyler Davis on the D-line. But ultimately, I just still trust Clemson's talent overall in a big game. We saw them murder Miami earlier this year when you thought, maybe Miami can give them a game. Even a couple years ago, going back to Notre Dame against Clemson in the playoff, and Ian Book-led Notre Dame team just got absolutely crushed 30-3. I know these are different teams, but I don't know. It's still the same programs. It's still the same coaches. So for that reason, like I said, the trust factor with Clemson is there.
That's fair. I think the timing of the Lawrence thing actually worked out as well as it could, in a sense, going into this game, in the sense that Uiagalelei got a full game to kind of work the kinks out, get familiar with the game speed, see some real game time. But the challenge for Clemson is that BC was able to key in and slow down their rushing attack. Clemson only had 3.4 yards per carry. There's no reason to think that the Irish defense can't at least somewhat replicate that. And then, Michael, you mentioned Skalski being out, the linebacker for Clemson. Like, he is arguably one of their quarterbacks on that defense. He's a leader there and one of the veterans. So that's going to be, his presence will be missed, especially against a running back like Karen Williams. He's been running the ball well lately. And before the season, I liked this spot for Notre Dame, so I'm going to kind of stick with it. So I'm going to take the Irish.
I'll disagree with Trey. I'm going to take Clemson also, like Michael did. Like I said, like Michael said, the trust factor is just a huge one in this game. Most, these big type of moments for Notre Dame hasn't necessarily been their strong suit, lately.
Yeah.
I mean, Clemson is of course a tough animal to deal with, but I'm not worried about Uyunglele. He was awesome last week, and I think he's going to be great again in this game. And I think you'll see a little bit more of I know Clemson struggled to run the ball against BC, but I think once they get up for this one a little bit, I think they'll have more success against Notre Dame. And I just think that defense at Clemson maybe have gotten their wake-up call last week also. So how good they were in the second half, they just completely stifled BC. So I think Notre Dame, which has been inconsistent on offense this year, they've had a couple of games where it's been like, what's going on? They hardly could have moved the ball against Louisville. So I think Clemson can kind of slow them down. I don't think they have enough weapons on the outside to really kind of push it deep on them and expose them. So I'm going to say Clemson.
Yeah, Notre Dame's offense hasn't been explosive this year yet. But to Trey's point, another difference between these two teams, obviously other than Trevor Lawrence not being there this time, is that...
Is it 100% he's not playing this game?
Yeah, Dabo
he's
said
out.
Oh, okay,
Dabo
I missed that.
Yeah, he's not going to play. But the difference is that Clemson's receiving core, like a couple years ago, they had T. Higgins and Justin Ross.
Justin Ross.
Yeah.
And now I'm not even sure if, I think last game they were missing Ladson and Gada. I'm not sure if one or both of them are going to be back, but either way, the receiving core is clearly not what it was a couple years ago. All right, moving on. We got Washington at Cal. Cal is favored by 1 in this game. What do you think, Trey?
Yeah, the spread's pretty crazy to me. A lot of metrics and power ratings would point to Washington being the better team. They're kind of more computer darlings than Cal is. So it kind of makes me think I'm a sucker for taking Washington. I wanted to take Cal when last week the opener was Washington favored around 5 or 6, but I'm gonna take the Huskies here, getting 1 point. We laid out in the Pac-12 preview that Garbers clearly makes the Cal offense better, but they're transitioning from a spread to a more pro-style attack. So that could be a challenge in game 1 up against a good Washington defense under Jimmy Lake. On the other side, the Husky offense is a big question mark, of course, but it's important to remember Cal is losing guys on the defense, most notably like guys like Evan Weaver, Luke Beckett transferred, linebacker Tevin Paul opted out. Wilcox, he'll generally get the most out of a defense, but I think they could regress a little bit this season, and that offensive shift is a question mark. So I'm going to take the Huskies.
I agree with you, Trey. I know Michael tried to make the point that he thought maybe Cal's defense could be a little bit better this year than they were last year. They didn't necessarily have, they kind of a little bit underperformed maybe what we thought from last year, but I don't agree with that assessment. I think they're going to be worse. Just too many players. We also didn't mention Ashton Davis. They lost some good key secondary players as well. But I trust UW. I know they've lost a couple times in a row to Cal, but let's not, overreact to super close losses, right? I think Washington just has the better team. I think they have the more talent. I know their QB battle is a little bit concerning. But again, I think talent wins this game. Their defense is still going to be very, very good. I don't think Cal's going to be able to move the ball all that well. Give me UW plus a point here.
Okay. I do think this line, like you said, Trey, is interesting. And honestly, if I could go back to our Pac-12 preview, I might put now Washington and Cal on the same tier. That was a very close decision to make because I didn't think there was a huge difference between Washington and Cal. But I trust the betting market. I definitely put a lot of weight into it because a lot of people think that it's the sports books that know. They always say Vegas knows, but really it's the betting market betting into these lines and adjusting them that makes it so hard to beat. And so I guess maybe I put a little too much stock into that 6-point look ahead line, because that was a line that basically nobody bet into. It was just a line that the sports book came up with. So the fact that the betting market seemed to be betting Cal heavily here to move this line is meaningful to me. But having said that, the line is what it is, and I will take Washington +1. I see a low scoring game, a close game. I think the over-under is like 43.5, because you got two good defenses here. It's just, Cal's offense could be better than Washington for sure. I mean, we don't know what John Donovan with his new system is going to be.
I agree.
But the problem is, I just don't know that yet. But I am pretty convinced that Washington's defense is better than Cal's. So
yes,
that's why I lean Washington here.
Agreed.
Okay. Let's get to
and it's Pac-12 after dark, by the way. That's going to be awesome.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's the nightcap. That's going to be awesome. Hey, we've been
7:30 Pacific time.
Finally, night games.
That's going to be awesome. All right. Let's get to the honorable mentions, Ryan.
Yes. All right. My first game is, maybe a game. Purdue at Wisconsin. Wisconsin is favored 7 right now. But doesn't sound like it's going to go. Wisconsin said they were up to 22 people out that had COVID. So, obviously they missed last week's game against Nebraska. I don't see how this game can be played there with the 21-day sit-out period for the Big Ten. They're supposed to decide tomorrow, so maybe as you're all listening to this podcast, you may already know. But I would have to say it's going to be a no-go, and I don't think the game after at Michigan's a guarantee at this point either. So, anyways, that's it's too bad for Wisconsin, but we'll see what happens tomorrow. Next game, West Virginia at Texas. Texas favored 6.5. West Virginia, of course, just whooped up on K-State. I mean, what the heck's going on in the Big 12? Jarrett Doege played really well. West Virginia ran the ball well, which was obviously their biggest thing they couldn't do last year. They were the worst ever. But consistency seems like an issue for them. They lost an ugly game to Texas Tech the week before, then they go and beat Kansas State. I don't really trust them to be up a couple games in a row here. I'm not high on Texas or anything, but they did just have a nice win. They did beat Oklahoma State, so they're feeling good, doing some confidence. So, and they're still in the Big 12 race. So I'll take Texas -6.5. My third game, I got Liberty at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's favorite 14.5. That Liberty's no joke. This is a high line to me. It seems like Hugh Freeze has those guys playing really well. Quarterback Malik Willis has been awesome so far this year. Former Auburn transfer, 67 completion percentage, 9-1 touchdown to interception ratio, rushing for 100 yards a game. Liberty's going to score. Virginia Tech's defense is not good. Liberty's going to put up points here. 14.5's too high. I really like them. I'm going to make Liberty my lock of the week. Fourth game, North Carolina favored 10.5 at Duke. A very disappointing loss, obviously, for North Carolina last week against Virginia. Defense just not playing well. They're just giving up too many points. Giving up 44 to Virginia. Ooh, it's a bad look. So I'm going to go with the Blue Devils. They beat up on Charlotte last week, and Charlotte's not terrible. They ran the ball well, so I think they can put up some points against the North Carolina D that just isn't playing well. So I'll take those 10.5 points at home. Our last game, UCLA's favored 6 at Colorado. Tough game for me to pick since I'm low on both these teams, but I'm going to go with the Buffs. I'll take the home dog there. UCLA's defense is going to be so bad that I just don't feel like they're going to be able to pull away from anybody. Colorado's going to be able to move the ball, and they have enough decent pieces, the Buffs do, on that defense. They got some decent players on that D-line. Nate Landman's a good linebacker. I think they'll be able to give some UCLA some trouble. Give me the Buffs.
Okay, I got Oklahoma State -12.5 at Kansas State. I actually came away from that Texas game we've talked about a bunch this episode with an even higher opinion of Oklahoma State, honestly, the way they kind of dominated everywhere but the scoreboard. And after seeing Will Howard for K-State really struggle against a good defense in West Virginia, I worry about him going up against an even better Oklahoma State defense. So as long as Spencer Sanders takes care of the ball, I like Oklahoma State. Michigan State at Iowa. Iowa's favored 6.5. I'm going to take the Spartans. I watched a lot of that Iowa game last week against Northwestern. Did not like what I saw from Spencer Petras, quarterback for Iowa. Michigan State's got a very good defense, I think, and one of Iowa's best offensive weapons, Amir Smith-Marset, is suspended for this game. So I think that's big. And I'm actually going to make, Michigan State my lock.
Ooh, wow. Our
Yes,
Sparty
sir.
fans are happy.
Yes, sir. Tennessee -1.5 at Arkansas. I don't know.
Who
I
the
don't
heck
know.
knows? Who
I
knows,
just
man?
like Arkansas, they're obviously much improved. I will say, though, one of the games that kind of really made us think they're super improved was that Mississippi State win, which, of course, week after week looks less impressive. As for Tennessee, I'll throw out the Alabama and Georgia games because they make a lot of teams look bad. I can't throw out the Kentucky game, but
Yeah.
hey, they're 2-1 against everybody but Alabama and Georgia, and they're coming off of bye, so sure, I'll take them -1.5. Wazoo at Oregon State. Oregon State is favored 1.5, but I'm going to go with the Cougs. I like Rolovich. I'm hoping he can get that run and shoot offense, rolling quickly with the talent that Leach developed and with his own freshman quarterback that he recruited, Jaden DeLora, who ran the run and shoot offense in high school in Honolulu. So he should be fun to watch. And I think Oregon State's offense could regress big time this year without Jake Luton, who really took care of the ball, without Isaiah Hodgins, who was really their only meaningful receiving threat.
All right, I'm going to lead us off with Nebraska at Northwestern. Northwestern's given 3.5. I hate to do it, but I'm taking Northwestern. Their offense still isn't that great. They only mustered 21 points last week, and they gave the ball away 3 times. But thankfully for them, they have a very good defense that forced 3 turnovers, and the offense was able to score on a 35-yard field to win the game. But my problem is I'm not a full believer in the Husker defense yet. Just don't see them shutting down anyone. The Huskers offensively might have challenges against that Northwestern D, considering Nebraska isn't full strength at receiver right now. They're going to need Omar Manning to step up and play this week, and then Wan'Dale Robinson needs to get more touches. The Aggies, I hope I'm wrong. The Aggies -10 at South Carolina. Will Muschamp, he's running out of chances at South Carolina, desperately needs a win. I'm kind of going with the theory here that you're not always as bad as you look, and you're not always as good as you look. South Carolina had a bye week to stew on their bad performance against LSU. The Aggies are playing with a bunch of confidence on the other side, but Arkansas statistically was kind of with them last week. So with their backs against the wall, I'm going to take the Gamecocks. I say they can keep it close behind a good day on the ground from Kevin Harris. Houston is facing Cincinnati. The Bearcats are given 13.5. We were all hopeful, but curious to see how Houston's redshirt strategy would pan out. Hasn't been great so far, but I'll give him somewhat of a pass considering every game they had in September ended up getting canceled.
Yeah.
But what I didn't like was they seemed a little lifeless in their game against UCF on Saturday. They only put up 21 points at home in what was supposed to be a really high-scoring affair. Cincinnati, we've touched on it earlier. Ryan, you said it. They're playing as well as anyone right now, smashing 2 good AAC opponents. Ritter's getting more confident as a passer. So I'm not going to get in front of that train. I'm going to take Cincy. And then finally, Maryland at Penn State. Penn State's given 25. We talked about Talia's awesome performance beating Minnesota last week. A lot of people might like them going up against an 0-2 Nittany Lion team, but we have to consider Maryland lost by 40 to Northwestern the week before. They were down 17 in that Minnesota game, but props to them for winning. And then Penn State, we've touched. We've said it ad nauseum. They could have easily won the Indiana game. Then they had to play Ohio State. Last year, remember, Maryland was 2-1 going in and looked pretty good. Penn State beat them 59-0. I think Penn State, this is their get-right game, and they take it out on the Terps.
I like it.
Okay, let's close out this episode here with a questionable finish. Dan Mullen dressed as Darth Vader at his post-game press conference after, of course, a brawl at halftime. What Halloween costume would be most fitting for another head coach to wear?
So I saw a costume that was like half of it was like red, kind of orangey, kind of like fire. It kind of looked like fire and flames. Then the other side was just like blue, and it was like ice, just like kind of white and icy. So fire and ice kind of was the, obviously the costume. I'm gonna go with Hugh Freeze as the fire and ice, since he coaches the Liberty Flames and his name is Hugh Freeze. So you got
I like that.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's clever.
very nice.
Very good.
Well done.
Yeah.
I think Derek Mason of Vanderbilt should have dressed like a duck because he seems like a lame duck head coach right now.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
it's not the only duck out there.
Well, I was, sticking in the SEC right now. The seller, Mike Leach, he's known as the Pirate, but he really should be a ghost because his team has disappeared since the LSU win, and he doesn't really want to be seen these days out in public. It's
Very nice.
ugly and stuff.
Very nice. I like it.
That's good.
Name something as likely as Rutgers taking down Ohio State this weekend.
That would be. It's more likely that I'll drink a beer this weekend, which we all know I'm not a drinker. So
no,
Not gonna happen.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I think it's as likely as Kanye West winning the election today.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, that's a good one. I would say it's as likely as I would say it's as likely as Colorado winning the Pac-12. It's not gonna happen.
Hey, stranger things have happened.
Have they?
Thing.
Have they?
Leicester City. Come on.
Oh, that's right.
I don't know what Colorado's odds were when they won, a few years ago, but they can't have been
true.
high.
True.
All right, let's get to our upset special. Got to pick a 7+ point underdog to win outright. And by the way, going back, I guess Rutgers beating Ohio State. Hey, it almost happened with Syracuse, 46.5 point underdogs against Clemson. I mean, you could say it almost happened in air quotes.
Yeah, it was tied in the fourth quarter or third quarter.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Upset special. So I'm going with my 7+ point underdog is Liberty, Ryan. I agree with you. Going up against Virginia Tech, they're a 14.5 point dog. Sorry, Justin Fuente. I love Fuente, but there's just going to be a ton of points in this game. Liberty, I think, has the potential to stay with them. Virginia Tech's defense is 116th in the nation in yards per rush allowed, and Liberty's 10th in the country in yards per carry on offense. So watch out.
Yikes. I'm going to take South Carolina getting 10 against A&M. They're coming off a bye week. I mentioned earlier how desperate they are for a win. It's home in Columbia. They can pull off the upset.
Sure. I kind of mentioned this one earlier. I'm going to take Arizona. They're getting 14 right now at Utah. Like Michael kind of mentioned, the bottom is possible that could kind of fall out here on Utah. Just with so much gone that the Utah brand is what's kind of keeping this, I feel like, almost at 14. There's so much unknown with that Utah team. And Arizona, we know that they're going to move the ball, I would think. Grant Gunnell is pretty good, and that offense should be able to move the ball. They got good pieces coming back, especially up front. So I think Arizona can give Utah a run for their money.
All righty. Well, I'm just realizing I said Virginia Tech was 116th in yards per rush allowed. That must be including some teams that haven't played yet. I went to teamrankings.com for that stat, but
yeah, Pac-12 team hasn't played yet, so that's
the MAC hasn't played yet, so maybe they were counting them as 0 yards per carry.
Yeah,
it's 130. Yeah, we're good.
Whatever, they're bad at this point.
They're not good.
They're horrible.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to the College Football Bros podcast. Again, if you want access to bonus episodes, including an Ask the Bros episode coming up, subscribe on Patreon. It's $5 a month. Appreciate your support there. And we will talk to you next week.
You've been listening to the College Football Bros. If you have any questions for the next podcast, email them to collegefootballbros@gmail.com. To keep up with the brothers on social media, like them on Facebook at College Football Bros, follow them on Instagram at College Football Bros, and for their commentary on Saturdays, follow them on Twitter at CFB Bros. Thanks for listening.